Yep.
All right, all right. Good night, and welcome to Fatherhood Think Tank. I want to welcome everybody who's joining us from wherever you're joining us from. We are about to go on a mission of father thought and feelings and mind thoughts, things that affect us as men and as fathers, and how it affects our whole community. Okay. All right. So I'm Ron Osborne Williams, the courier. I keep trying to use that word. I can't. I keep.
Which one? Facilitator, moderator, which one?
No. The person.
Curator.
Curator. Thank you, Gene. I'm the curator. The Fatherhood Think Tank. You can see all of our great art and the great fathers that we have here. So welcome tonight. We had a really interesting topic tonight. One that I it wasn't in our regular schedule, but it came up. This event came up, and I thought it was maybe important to kind of talk about, even for me myself, and we haven't really touched on something like this in a while. So I thought I brought this in here, the topic of father abandonment. So we're going to get to that topic. Let's let the fathers who are in the room introduce themselves, and then we're going to get on with the. You can always remember, like, share, subscribe to our YouTube page. And I would say, more than anything, share to people, because this is some content that we really need in our society. I know that we like a lot of controversy, a lot of jokes and laughs, but sometimes we need some serious things for our mind to empower us beyond places where we are. And sometimes having a conversation, listening to conversations will make you just that much smarter. So, fathers, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Frederick Adams, father of 3, 1 grandson.
Larry Jordan, father of 2, 1 grandson. Good evening, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry about the rain in the background.
And don't forget the gray-haired assassin. Hey, good evening, gentlemen. My name is Lionel Lightborn. I'm sorry. I'm a father to the tribe of 7 young adults, 3 young women, 4 young men, and 1 granddaughter whose birthday this week that I kind of vaguely forgot the date, but she'll get something Friday. So, hopefully she won't see this until she's old enough to handle it. And it's always a pleasure being here with you guys.
Gene Robert Menard, father of 2 young adults, one female, 1 man, 1 woman, man. Gotta get used to that. I'm just saying 1 girl, 1 boy, because in my mind they're still like 5 years old running around. I got used to them being adults.
Yeah. And
You're on mute.
can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Now we
Can you hear me?
Yep.
we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Maybe having technical difficulties a little bit.
Can y'all guys hear me? Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah, we get you, Vince.
Yeah, man. I'm a father of 3, gonna be 4. Yep. And my full name is Vincent Renard, and I got an older boy, and he's 6, gonna be 7. I got two younger girls, Victoria and Imani, and Cortez, the oldest one. And shoot, they growing up so fast, man. It's crazy.
Okay. All right. Anybody, who else down there? Okay, who else down there? Come on, men in the audience.
Chad Walker, father of 2 teenagers, 1 female, 1 male.
Okay. All right, who else we got in there? Who we got some latecomers coming in there, but they coming. Who? Fred, did you say yourself already?
Fred was first.
Yeah, he
yeah.
is.
See, I'm slipping. We got some other people, gentlemen. As you coming in, we introducing ourselves. You can check the check the chat and get the back screen for the night. Gene Robert will put it back in, and then we'll talk. You know, we're gonna start our conversation, and you can just introduce. I can see you, Rohan. So, want to introduce yourself really quick? You can't talk yet. You know, making women's soccer time.
Yep. Hi, fathers. Name is Rohan Rodok, father of 2 young teenagers. I've always said it's a pleasure sharing information with these fathers, and we're here to advocate for fathers. That's what we do.
Okay. And I see one more person. Tay W.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing?
Hey, how you doing tonight, my brother?
I'm good. I'm good. New to it. I'm new. I'm Tate Warburton. I'm a father of 3, 2 boys, 1 girl. I have a soon-to-be 5-year-old that stays with me, 365 days out of the year. Say that 360, 24/7. So, I introduce myself.
All right, great. Welcome, my brother. And
Welcome,
this is one of the
brother.
new. I just want to tell the fathers here. This is one of the new younger brothers we recruit. He was sent to us, and I'm trying to recruit him. Young brother who we had a long conversation yesterday.
Yeah.
Very good for our conversations that we have here, because he's also working on his own web thing, web podcast, stuff like that. So, and as we said, we need to get more younger fathers here, because we talk a lot of old fathers and middle-aged fathers, but we need to get some of these younger fathers here who can talk the young father lingo that's out there. And so, welcome again, my good brother. All right, so let's get down to it. Let's get down to the topic. Topic is father abandonment. We hear this very often. People say that this occurs, and that's what people are out here. These men are out here, and the next word that come with father abandonment is deadbeat. Deadbeat. And sometimes I've been having. I personally have an issue with, language that can be used. And Rohan, you can appreciate. Just had a conversation with a family member about the use of words that become bullets, and then people begin to make that your narrative, make your situation, because of the narrative they have about your situation, the reality of the situation. And in many instances, we know that there are, and at no point will I ever say that there's not fathers who legitimately abandon their children. Now, the reason why they abandon their children, we don't know unless we actually physically talk to them. I have a problem as a therapist. I'm not one of those guys who will say, well, somebody tell me something, I'm only going to take that side, because everybody knows it's 3 sides. It's your side, their side, and what God knows is the truth. Because if somebody else was there, and they'd use the person, God know the truth, and they can point out what your side is, what your right and what your wrong is, as well as the other person in the situation. So when we start looking at this idea of father abandonment, I want us to really think about this conversation about, it's not as simple as, oh, Papa was a Rolling Stone type of thing, because why was Papa a stone and why was he rolling? Sometimes it's something that needs to come up. We can easily say whatever we want, but a big thing I heard this week, I was listening to a podcast, and the podcaster was interviewing this lady, and she was talking about what happened between her and her husband. And I think her daughter had asked her, well, Mom, why did you ever tell me that Daddy was cheating on you or cheating on you? And the mom told the daughter, because that's not your business. That's our business, our relationship business. That never stopped him from being the father he was being to you, based on what was going on with me and him in a relationship. And she was and the lady was pointing out that we see that very often, that people will put their kids into their grown folks' business, sometimes to have even other people, not just the kids, they put other people into their business so they can have more backup, like the people on the shore down there at the Riverwalk in Montgomery, so they can have more people to back up their part of what they had going on. So even though we don't know what the true narrative is, but then they'll say, hey, this is what happened, this is what happened, and everybody, and you don't really get to hear from the other side, the other person. And usually, unless you had this conversation, those feelings and those things can harbor. And then it turns into a thing that people could say, hey, you abandoned me. You never was with me. You never was around me. You didn't never reach out to me. You never talked to me. You never did anything. But now, and this is a classic word, now you want to talk to me since I'm grown and an adult, right? But I don't need you now. And that's probably, listen, I will say this. I think I've heard that more about people saying when they're grown, they don't need a father now since they're grown. And I feel that's one of the biggest mistakes you ever need, because you don't say you don't still need your mother. So why would you not need your father? But now you can meet your father on your own terms now, on with no bias, nobody else. And if your father is a deadbeat, if he selfish, if he's an abandoner, you'll know that for yourself, not from what somebody else told you, not what somebody else's impression or their relationship was. You would have your own idea and understand what happened. And I say that to say that even in households where parents live together in a house with their children, kids still feel this way about parents they live in a house with. I remember we had one of our fathers a long time ago, he would talk about, his father lived in a house with him, but he felt abandoned that his father never did anything with him ever. But again, I challenged him and asked him why. What was your dad doing that he never did anything? He said working all the time. So what is that? What kind of work was he doing? I mean, how did y'all live? And that again talks about conversation. It's kind of easy to throw things at people and put things, and it goes into my old saying, and I'm going to let y'all guys get in here. Confronting versus criticism. See, this is the key part of this. Instead of confronting somebody about something, because if you confront them, that means you got to listen to why they saying or doing whatever they doing. But if you criticize them, it's a shutdown, because the person feel like what you're saying not true, and they're gonna shut down. So I throw that back out there, and then I throw it out to the guys. What do you think about this whole idea of father abandonment? Some of the, what do you think? And as our topic say, what are some of the consequences? Look, I'm slipping right now. Some of the consequences.
Let me comment on where you first started at when you said that the dangers of labeling something becoming a bullet. And I think the danger of that, especially when you're looking at deadbeat dads and terms like that, is the danger of the generalization of it, right? Because you start to label everybody that way who you think fits that mold, whether or not you know their story. And I think that's where it becomes dangerous. And I think that's where it becomes an issue, is because you start to widen your net to trap as many people up in there as you possibly can, just so that you can fit a narrative that fits what you believe to be true. So I think that's the one thing that's the most dangerous, especially when you start labeling issues and circumstances without knowing the full story. And also, going to another piece of what you said, again, getting that full story. Like you said, there's always three sides: yours, his, and the truth, or what God knows is the truth. And so what you have to do is try to be objective, especially if you're coming from if you're that outside person looking in. It's about objectivity and understanding. And as a kid, as a kid also, and I know that's where the difficulty comes in at the most, is to try to be objective when you're finally able to confront that parent. To say, you know what, I want to listen to what you have to tell me. I want to listen to what you have to say so I can understand why you weren't around or why you weren't able to be a part of my life. Because just like it can happen to a father, it can happen to a mother. And if you're willing to listen to that mom, you should be listening to that dad. And so I think a lot of times, because fathers are expected to be a certain way and do a certain and behave a certain way, it kind of gives you the difficulty in allowing them to come in at a later time in your life, because already you've been conditioned that if he really cared, he would have been there from the beginning. Where you don't,
he would have fought for you or did certain things.
Exactly. And again, you sometimes just don't understand that fight that they do, or the advocation, like Rohan likes to say, the advocating that they have to do in order to get to that role, or even to get to the baby step of beginning to get to the role to be in your life. And there's so many roadblocks that fathers go through that makes it a lot more difficult than a lot of people realize. Mm-hmm. And I think understanding that and being a little bit more objective when it comes to, you know, allowing that person again to be part of your life and hear what they have to say is big.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to comment real quick in regards to that. You know, as the many people say, how can people walk together unless they agree? Now, I think that in the beginning, a lot of times kids don't understand abandonment because they don't understand the background and how this thing actually even occurred. In many situations, I know that you have children that are produced. It's a case where most of the time the man does not want any kids, and the female may want kids. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have agreed, you said you've expressed to the lady, listen, I don't want any kids. I ain't trying to get no kids. I'm not into that. And then the next thing you know, you wind up with an unwanted pregnancy. There's going to be some hostility on behalf of the male in many cases, because it's going to be like, I told you I didn't want no kids. You know, now I would agree that if you did not want any kids, you should have done everything that was within your power to prevent any kind of unwanted pregnancy. But as you know, a lot of times we're not even thinking about that at the time. We're thinking about other things. Mm-hmm. So I say that because then down the road, there is some hostility. It's like, why should I even, you know, especially if it's like, well, many times you get the ladies that say, well, listen, I don't need you anyway. I can raise this child by myself. I can do all these things that I can do by myself. And then just basically say, okay, if you can do that, then you take care of that, you know. But unfortunately, you know, 17, 18, 19 years down the road, you got a child that feels abandoned.
What, Larry, let me just put the term that you use and describe that. You know, again, I coined this term. Well, I re-coined it from the court. The court, it is non-consensual fatherhood. That's the term. The court used this term to describe men who didn't consent to having a child. A lot of it is about you getting their semen or things they didn't consent to. And then a lot of it is child support related. But I coined it in my research that what I found when working in this program is that you find that a lot of men are non-consensual fathers. And it's not to show that as the negative. The issue is showing the positive of consensual fathers, and that how great things are and how you can still have a good relationship with their children when they have consented to be a father. because the relationship between the two parents is different. You know, it's not like one person feel like one is getting over on the other. You put somebody in a situation they didn't want to be in. Because also there are times when sometimes people do things out of emotional need and then later on regret it. You know, it's not promised that just because we had a child that we will even have any relationship later. You know, I know some friends of mine who they've been together 10 years. Their child is 7 years old. They got engaged yesterday. You dig it? You know, they got engaged yesterday. So that whole, but that sounds like what I would consider non-consensual fatherhood, right? But it's not. It is a situation where they had a child, but also when you know the backstory, they lived in two different places and they couldn't come together in a place to get married and do all that until they could work in the same place. And both of them was working on their career and doing the thing and the opportunity of being able to come and live together for a year. And now they're getting married. And that's a smart, listen, I would tell you as a therapist, that was a smart thing. It's easy to love somebody from a distance, but to get married to them without living with them a little bit time before, whatever, they were great parents. They had a great relationship, all that, but there's still some other parts that you got to work out. And so it just goes to show this idea of what our assumptions of something is, and we may think. We have to know what it is and the facts of it. Because in many circumstances, I would look from it, if not knowing their situation, I'd be like, well, she probably had that baby and he didn't want to have a baby. They just still together because of that. But now, since I know I'm able to have a conversation with both of them, I understand that, yes, they planned to have that baby. They wanted to have a baby. They just didn't get married or do all that stuff because they wasn't in the same place at the same time. And they're military people. So there you understand a little bit more of the situation. So that is a big part of narratives and understanding people's narrative before we go and say this person good, this person bad, this dad bad, he a deadbeat, or the mom is a gatekeeper. You don't know what those things is till you kind of have a full picture and be able to have a conversation with all of them.
You know what? I want to give a shout out. I see one of my brother, actually your brother too, because I think you guys in the same fraternity. Josh Jones. So I ain't see my brother in a minute. Love you, fam. I'm glad you joined the discussion, and I definitely want to hear what you have to say about this particular topic. Also, Brian Persons, I see you on there as well. How I feel about it is, again, I think like any, we got to see family or approach family like a business, right? I think we see fatherhood through the lens of options. And I think that's where we fail. And until fatherhood become an objective, but then I think about it, I'm like, well, Lionel, fatherhood can't become an objective until manhood becomes an objective. And I think we have too many options and not enough objectives. And this is why we really can't define what either manhood is, right? One of the most vaguest discussion what manhood is and what fatherhood is. If you can't describe what manhood is, you probably can't describe what fatherhood is. And so here you are, we got all these options. And even when you try to define it, you're going to see so many people come up with so many different opinions. And that's what I mean. One of the examples of what I mean by too many options and not enough objectives. And so once you find your objective, because all of us have objectives. I mean, everything you're a part of have objectives. You work for a company, they got objectives. The very things and products you buy, they have objectives. And so if you find out to start your family, if you plant conception without an objective, you understand, then you're gonna be lost. It's not a real, you understand, it's not a real concept. And so what happened is you're gonna see everybody fighting to find their way. They're struggling, which is back to one of your points, one of your the words you use in your when you used in the intro about the resilience part. We tell you about resilience, be careful of that word. Because the resilience, I don't like to compare Black people to resilience. Why? Because roaches are resilient. You understand? And roaches, just because you got to understand roaches. Roaches survive, but they don't succeed. You see the difference? When you're resourceful, you can be successful. But when you're resilient, you survive. And so we're taught, and not only taught, but expected to survive. This is the type of of cloak, the mantra, motto that we put on ourselves, or resilience. And so people, when they come in and don't value you, the real experience of your community, and they say, oh, you guys, and then they won't even acknowledge their cause and their contributions to your whatever you're struggling with. And so they say, oh, your community is so resilient. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the most ignorant statements I ever heard in my life. You understand? Instead of saying, you know what, let me find, and then on the other side of their mouth, they'll say something like, yeah, but it takes a village. You understand? Villages are not resilient. Villages are resourceful because there's a network of cultural, historical, you understand, successes that get us to the freedom and makes us not only sustain our freedom, but solidify it and enhance it the way we are doing it today. This is how we become president and presidents of different companies, organizations, associations. And so we have to be careful about how we let people basically objectify us. And so if people get away with objectifying you as a man, then guess what you're going to naturally do? You're going to objectify your women. And so that's just my 2 cents on that, and I'll let somebody else go.
You know what, Lionel? I like what you were saying with the objectives, but I'm gonna take it a little step further. I think as when you're looking at it as a business, the man has to have a mission and a vision, and that gives you that little bit more of clarity when you're trying to find the objectives to reach your mission and your vision, and that gives you that focus. And I think with your idea of the options, I agree 100% with that, because you've got too many people trying to find what's already been defined for them. And you have to, you have to wheel out or weed out all the ones that don't make sense or are just a bunch of nonsense in order to get to the real ones that cut to the meat and the potatoes of what it is that you're trying to succeed and become, which is a father. So I think that mission of yours is to be the father. Your vision is to be a man who's a great father. And so I think with the objectives, you can then clarify it a little bit more with those objectives in order to reach that. And I 100% agree with that village mentality, because you need all the resources that you can in order to be successful. There's no such thing as a business that stands by itself. A business stands with the clients that it serves, with the customers it has, and it's only going to get better with the way it treats the people that are helping to reach the full potential.
Okay, fathers, y'all welcome to jump in here anytime. This is open floor. I know everybody have heard the word father abandonment, what their thoughts are. And it's not just what we think about it, it's also what we know to be true about a statement like father abandonment, or being a children being abandoned, and what that means. And if we don't got anything, listen, I want to bring up a point that I was having a conversation with a mother today. The idea that are we including people who have problems with drugs as abandoners? Are we saying that they abandoned their kids, their family, because they had narcotics, substance, AA issues?
Well, you know what? Before we touch that, because I was actually thinking, when I talk to certain people, they feel abandoned because the father had to work.
Right.
They felt abandoned because he didn't have enough time to spend with them, because he was too busy working and providing for the family in that way, and giving them the basic needs. So even when you're in the home, you can still have a child who has a sense of abandonment when it comes to the need for you to be economically a resource for the family, versus them and the lack of engagement that you have with the kids. So I think that's also an issue, along with now are you looking at the drugs and all this other stuff that comes into play within the home environment?
Well, it's like this, and I can't, because one thing I want to do is give a man another excuse to not be a man. Understand? And when you're talking about addicts, right? Remember I told you when we first started in the earlier part of this, and I don't know why I'm blinking over here, but it's okay. Anyway, y'all can still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Don't worry about blinking, but don't worry about it. You can still hear me. So I think most of us struggle between the advocate and the advocate. I mean, the advocate and the addict, all of us. Just as sure as you got sins and addictions. And so it doesn't have to be drug use or a drug addiction that takes you away from your child. It could be a sex addiction that keeps you from committing to your child and taking your or running the streets. It's more than drugs addictions that actually keep men away from their child. Most men just can't keep out of the street. They just can't keep. Matter of fact, most men can't. What's the word on there? Can't separate themselves from their boyhood, right? They just can't really transition from boyhood to manhood. And so you may have the addiction to whatever euphoria or satisfaction make you feel like, and this is the word, another really good buzzword and a very addictive word, happiness. And so you got to be careful with happiness, because again, I stand by this, happiness is a high. And so that happiness can have you chasing what makes you happy, you understand, versus real happiness, and that's what you give. And until you can differentiate between receiving to make you happy versus giving to make you happy, you're never going to be a good father anyway, so you're going to defeat the purpose. And so that's just one of the concepts of it. I think a lot of times, so the addict of any kind, especially a drug addict, again, you got to remember, you provide for that habit. So why in the hell would I make an excuse for you not to buy it to your children? You have a relationship with that habit. You understand? And so I don't want to put drug use like it's a kind of boogeyman. I'm like, no, those are all relationships. And so if you can cultivate a relationship with that drugs and find ways and be resourceful to get those drugs every day for 20 years, you understand? You can apply that same try to your children. And all it would have took is a try. But if you never really had the wherewithal to try being a father like you tried being a drug user, then that's still on you. So you wouldn't get a pass from it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm finished.
Can I say something?
Brian, you don't have to ask, brother. Everybody free to talk.
Okay. I want to throw something in here because I come from such a very unique kind of background where my parents, mother and father, my parents had 14 children, okay? And 11 of those 14 children were males. And in my mind, and if you ask, of course, someone else in my family, they would tell you that the greatest example of manhood or anything was our father, okay? And he had some sayings coming along. He said that he would never visit one of his sons in prison. And you know what? He lived to be 80 years old, and he never did visit one of his sons in prison because none of them ever went to prison, okay? I think also when we think about how we're affected, you know, we have two minds. We have a conscious mind and we have an unconscious mind. And things are affecting us at young ages that we don't realize at the time that it's having an impact on us. And often we see people dating in certain ways and we say, man, what's wrong with him, man? What's wrong with this cat? Okay. You don't know what that cat might have been exposed to long before you came to know them. So I think those things, because you brought up the drug thing, and I say this as a person who never used any kind of drugs, was never even tempted to use a drug, never smoked a joint, never. And I think that, again, quite often, having a bunch of older brothers who also have been exposed to that leadership, it was so powerful that they were also leading by example, not just our biological father, but my biological brothers too. I only have one young brother, so I have 9 older brothers. And I just think that a lot of times, sometimes people don't realize that the effects on who you are and who you're going to be start long before you are consciously aware that they are going on.
Oh, well.
I just wanted to say something real quick, and especially in regards to Lionel's point. What I found is that in regards to whether it be drug addiction, alcohol addiction, gambling addiction, let's say staying out in the streets and all of that, to me, they all have one thing in common, and that is that person is self-centered, that they really care about their needs more than anything else. And that's why they're subject to that. Most times when people come out of those addictions, like I said, I'm definitely not the expert to talk on it, but it would be when you start realizing for yourself that there are other people in the center of the world other than you, and that there are things that you need to do to bring yourself out of that addiction with a betterment of your family or with a betterment of the situation. My question is, or my statement basically is that those people who normally have those addictions, also, they don't want to be fathers. They don't want that responsibility because they're self-centered. They don't want to have to be able to share their world with anyone else. And my question to you gentlemen is that how would you approach, because you all know a lot better than I do, how do you approach those types of men who have that self-conceit and they are not willing to bring themselves to the point where they even want to be fathers, even though now they're presented with the fact that they are fathers?
I'm going to put in a word on that, LJ. And I always say this. Whenever I have an issue or situation, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Whenever I have an issue or situation, I need to know the 70% of the issue before I can solve the 30%. I say that to many of the fathers, yeah? So when you mention about someone who's addicted, there are many different types of addiction. We talk about people with pain medication, drugs, and all kind of addiction. And you mentioned self-centered. But most time what I see with people who are addicted, they have to come to that point. You could talk, the family could go around them, they could lose their jobs. They have to fall. Sometimes you have to allow them to fall and allow them to make that decision. Guess what? I'm not going to do this no more. That's what I've seen over the years. Sometimes they have to make that decision. We can encourage them, empower them. But what I see most of the time is what I call, I say this around every time. It's called, is it empowered run? When you empower someone, many times you have to be very careful how you are dealing with addicts, because when you empower them, they go to jail, they come out of jail, you take them out of jail, they go back to jail, you take them out of jail. You're really empowering them. You're not allowing them to fall. And many fathers and mothers make this mistake by empowering the children, thinking that it's going to make it better. Because we don't want our kids to fall, right? We don't want our men to fall. But sometimes you got to fall. And unfortunately, that's a tough consequence to face. But sometimes it's the best route, in my opinion.
I want to add something, because I think it's a fine line as a parent in trying to have a quote unquote life or find that balance. So I have two kids, and early on while they were being raised, my wife killed me all the time about, me being too busy. But I don't believe my life purpose is in between my four walls of my house. Obviously, I have a responsibility as a man and a husband and father to make sure that my house is fine. But if you're asking or telling me that, well, she was telling me that I need to either give up my extracurricular activities, which to me is a way that I find peace, whether it be fishing, or if I'm not fishing, maybe I might be playing flag football or involved in, my fraternity or whatever it may be, that's helping other people. I don't see the harm in that, and maybe it's selfish. It's not like I'm with the fraternity or fishing or football for 8 hours out of the day. There's 8 hours that I have to be at work. There's probably another 5 hours that I sleep. So that's what, 10, 13 hours. So that leaves me with about 9 hours. And if our schedules conflict, then it's gonna be like, well, you too busy for your family, or your kids feel abandoned. So it's like, well, damn, what do you do?
Very, very good point.
Hey, this is one of the reasons why I love to have this diverse group of fathers, because Chad, what you just described, right? And I've listened to this for the last 2 years working with home visitors who go to work with mothers, prenatal and postnatal mothers, healthy start programs, right? And they will say that there's such a special bond between mothers and their children and these things. And there is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with them being completely enmeshed with their children, right? And I've come to some conclusion that sometimes people think that you should do the same thing that they're doing. You know, if you don't do what I'm doing, that means that you don't equivalent up to what I am. And so it may look like, as a father, and this is why it's so important for fathers to define what it means for them to be a father. You know what you need to do to be all of who you is later. Many mothers, I don't think, do that. I think sometimes mothers become only a mother, right? And that's why there's a big controversy in the woman's sphere about what it means to be a woman, that if you are a woman, the only way you can be a woman is to be a mother, and that's the defining of womanhood. Whereas women are saying, no, I can be more than, I don't just have to be a mother to be a woman. I can do all the other things in the world and still be a woman. And that goes back to the idea, as fathers, we don't have that boundary on us. You know, fathers, our wives, our caregivers may feel that way, but the rest of the world will not judge you and say, hey man, why you always out here at the football games? Why you always working so much? Why you doing all these things? Because that boundary of being a father isn't put on us. We can put it on ourselves. I've seen men who said, yo, I can't do this because I got to spend time with my kids. I got to do this. And people will look at this person like, come on, man, you can't hang out with us. Can't do that. Because it's not sometimes, I think, normalized. And so when Chad, as you were saying, all I could think about is the idea of, you would, in many instances, look like the bad guy for wanting to do something and not do the same thing that your wife was doing. If your wife felt like being with these kids was most important, and she, again, even when they don't want to do that, right? Because I know many women who'll be like, I just want to throw these kids away. I don't even want to be with them. I'm so tired of them. I hate them, not hate them for real, but I hate these kids, or the kids, get these kids, F these kids, the whole 9 yards. But the society will say, you're a bad woman for doing it. But we don't have that same restriction on us as men sometimes. You're not a bad father for going in and doing these things in the world. But also, isn't that something we need to do? I tell both parents, what do you do outside of being a parent so often? If your world is wrapped up in just being a parent, what are you going to do when these kids are grown and go about their way? I see more women right now who have pretend to have took on the mantle to be the mother and the father, so they're a 24/7 parent over all of the child, and now they do not know what to do, but at some point meddle in their children's adult lives because they don't have anything else, because they're really stuck on still being this kind of, like, I need to be the center of everything that's going on with you because I'm your mother, or I'm the person in charge. When you're married to your husband tell you, we ain't got time to be worrying about them. They grown. Let's go on the cruise, baby. Look, they electric bill ain't paid. Look, that's their problem. We ain't gonna put them out there. They need to figure that out. He need to figure that out. She need to figure it out. And I think that's just, is a blessing and a curse that mothers have, and also a blessing and a curse that we have as fathers, that the social construction of what we should do and how we do them is somewhat different. So it sets that kind of tone where you could have your wife say to you, Chad, like, yo, you're out being too much. You're not at home enough. You're not here doing the things with the family like I think you should do, or how I would do, because I would do as a mother. So I think that's a very interesting thing thing that you brought up, Chad.
I'm gonna give a little bit of pushback on that because he described, Chad did describe what he does for himself, but I didn't hear him say any piece of the balance of engagement with the kids. You see what I'm saying? Now, if he was like, I go fishing and I bring the kids, that's, I get that. Or sometimes I bring the kids. You don't have to always incorporate the kids, but is there a balance in your free time and what you do and an incorporation of your time with the children?
I think that's a great point. And to put it in the context, I left that out. Yes, I do take my kids fishing, and on the days that I don't, I go fishing at like 5 in the morning and I'm back home by 11 a.m. So we have all day to do, whatever it is that they want to do. I've had my time. Now it's the weekend when school's not in, we can do whatever. And I do that with them. I make sure I carve out time to spend quality time with my wife, but it's just like, I guess because I have hobbies that I do or extracurricular things that you may pull me away. For instance, this call right now, I'm on this call when they probably just watching TV. They don't want to hear me talking or don't want to hear the phone going, so I remove myself from the room. But that may seem like he's here, but he's absent. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, where is that? And I know I have more hobbies than her, but I look at it like that's not my fault. You got friends that you choose not to do things with. I have friends that sometimes I'm going to do things with, i.e. fishing and play football. But that only lasts about a few hours, football, and that's at the end of the night. Everybody's homework done, food cooked, and now I'm off at 7 o'clock, 7:30 to go play football. I'll be back by 9. So I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
You know what? But Chad, let me.
Chad, I think you hit it. I'm sorry, Ron. You gonna say something?
No, let me just throw this in there, and it definitely Gene come in. See how we looking at this in reference to Chad living in the house with his wife, right? But who's managing that for single parents? Who's managing how much time they spending with the kids? There's no one managing that. It's no one who can even tell them anything about what they do with the kids because they saying, I got the kids. And I see this very often when I see fathers who are in dispute with the mother who has custody and she has a custodial custody of the child, and she's telling him what she don't want him to do, how she want him to do this. He can't do this. And the reason why is because she's the mother. She's saying, I'm the mother. That's why you can't take him out in the sun and I can. That's a factual thing. You can't because I'm the mother. Who then regulates her? Because some of the same things she was telling him not to do as a father, she's doing the same things. So I think there's not just a thing about, who's doing it, because I think as human beings, we all do the same things. Some mothers spend 0 time with their kids, but they are the ones who will have the main custodial possession of the kids, right? And they'll say, oh, because I have the possession, that means that I'm doing everything with the kids. Shit, some kids stay with both of their parents, and the parents don't do nothing with their kids. They don't even say how, they don't even get them ready for school in the morning. Mm-hmm. So I think these are things that when we're looking at this, these things are not exclusive to just a father or mother. These are parenting issues overall that become an issue. So you can really be an abandoning parent, even living in a house with your kids. So the question is, who's making the determination of being an abandoned parent?
Push back on you that like that, because I'm just gonna tell you, and we're talking about let's just say statistically, and let's say maybe psychologically, or maybe even biologically, right? And so, and I always said, and I say this is my quote. I think men take care of women better than they take care of children, and I stand by it. And the reason I stand by that, I think, because we have a history and a history of conditioning to do so. This is why when you see relationship break up, you rarely see a man going to find another kid. I keep telling you, that man go find another woman, but he'll never go in search of another kid. You understand? And so, but you will have a woman right? That'll take a man with kids. When you have kids, and I can talk for myself, my own selfish testimony. I had kids and didn't want a woman with kids. I'm just going to show I'm going to let me throw me out. You understand? And so, but I'm just the one that admitted. So I don't want to sit here and put a narrative out there. Well, at least that's not true for me. You understand? And it was my relationship. I had to be reconditioned, right? To really, because to be honest with you, take the mothers out of the equation, I don't think I'd have been half the father I was to my children. But the fact that those mothers did do what they're biologically made up to do, it really mentored me into the parent that I needed to be. And I can say that. And so I don't see motherhood as nothing else but a mentorship, because I believe that they know more about their kids than I do, simply because they carried them. I got to respect the fact that they carried them. And I got to also respect the scientific fact that they gave their life for them at birth, because it is a 50-50 chance that both of them will die at birth, like we seen that Olympic star just did 2 months ago. You understand? So we can't sit here, and we'll never understand what that is, because we can't give birth to children. And so the psychological makeup of that, only women can define that. So I can't define that for them. But what I can do is appreciate the fact that they do that at the same time. This is why they're so volatile towards men who don't make it with, especially when they have children for them, because of that that traumatic life. I won't even say threatening, because it did happen. Their life was on the line, but that life endangerment that when they gave their kid. And so to a certain extent, scientifically, they have a right to you. You understand? And I think we take that too lightly. The fact that this woman already gave her life, not only for that child, but for you, because she had that child from you. And I think we have to do a better job at really securing that narrative, and in some cases, securing our women.
I listen. I don't disagree with that. My problem, I just want things to be fair and balanced. Because what if I didn't ask you to do that? You took it upon yourself to do that. You take it upon yourself to risk your life and then hold me accountable for everything that happens after that. That's not. Listen, that's unfair. That's not. You would say, in any case that you hear a story of a woman say, "This man got me pregnant. I didn't want to be pregnant. He messed up my whole life." Right? You hear this all the time. But no one wants to hear that from any man, because they'll say, if you should have known better. Huh?
No. I really don't want to hear from the man, because let me tell you something. It's an enjoyment for you to have that child. You know why? Because let me tell you why. We enjoy having sex. And so, truthfully, if you again, back to that addiction. If you wasn't addicted to the enjoyment, or you didn't have that sexual addiction, you won't have that predicament. That's just simple.
So women don't enjoy sex? Are you saying women don't enjoy sex like men do?
I know women enjoy sex, but it costs them more. It doesn't cost us more, but it costs them more. It ain't painful for us to have sex. You see the difference? It ain't never been painful for us to have sex. That's why we seek it so much.
So if you
got women that will peak at having sex even when they get older, because it's about an average woman, to tell you this, it's about a 50% chance. And literally, women talk about this all the time. It's a 50% chance. They enjoy sex, and I'm going, this is a high number, 50% of the time. 50. We enjoy sex 100% of the time. And so we got to pay into that. We got to explain that. We can't just sit here and be insensitive to it.
Oh, I don't think it's an insensitiveness. I'm saying that if something threatens you and you don't like it, don't do it. And then if you do it, don't hold me accountable for what happens after you do it. Because I didn't make you, and outside of me raping you, I didn't make you do anything. You could tell me no, and guess what would happen? I would find somebody who likes and enjoy doing it as much as I would.
Yeah, well, hold on, Ron.
Yeah, that is completely what you just said.
Well, again, sex is to each person, because I hear you guys, but sex, everyone's body is different. Everyone is attracted to someone differently. Everyone has different motives, agendas. So sex is a very touch and go subject, because we know some parties do 4 people, some females do 4 people. So when we say, I agree with that, it is painful for many, but there are many things that many women are unable, and some men too, about sex and how to do it in a way so they can better communicate to have a better outcome. So again, sex is a very I won't say it's a touchy subject.
don't
You know what
think
it is? You know what it is, Rohan? You can't generalize. Sex is not
I don't
something.
think
I agree
it's
with you 100%.
problem overrated.
It can't be generalized to say all people fall into this category when you start talking about sex, because you have certain people, whether it's men or women, who go and seek it out. You see what I'm saying? For their pleasure. So I don't think it's what do you call that? A thing that's going to be dominant from one gender to another. I think it's something that just can't be too generalized, because you have your pockets of individuals who treat it differently. You have those people who don't want to have it until they get married. You have those people who are like, yo, I'm gonna live my best life up until the point I decide to change who I am, and then I'll settle down with one person. And then you have your group of people who just say, you know what, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to do what I want to, I'm going to experiment. And then, I'm going to use it as a tool to find the right person. I don't agree with all the different, there are certain things about the last aspect that I don't agree with, but everyone's going to use it the way they're going to use it to weed whatever they're going to weed out. You see what I'm saying? And I think what we have to get at when it comes to sex is that it is something that's like Ron said, unless it's forced upon somebody, it is a mutual agreement by both parties to have done. Now, the outcome when it lands into a pregnancy, whether it's wanted or not wanted, it's the byproduct of both of you. Regardless, it's how you act after it happens that defines you as a man and a woman, period. And that's the thing that we have to get through our heads. And that's and until we start to realize that, okay, regardless on how this baby came about or why it's here, I now have to step up and do what I need to do to secure a future for it, not a future for myself. Then that's when we start to change the way we think, and we start to implant the proper parenting skills, fathering skills, mothering skills, life skills into what it is we want this child to be.
Like that. So Chad is there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Chad, you mentioned earlier time, and we as fathers talk about quality time, because there's time and there's quality time. But Chad, one of the greatest problems I see with all of us is communication on the job, in personal relationship, worse so in business. That's why these judges make a lot of money. We know that it is simple. If your wife says to you, you need to spend time, you need to go, I'll use this term, you need to go on her bridge and listen to everything she needs to say. Because you said you didn't understand. So we're gonna put a solution here. Go on her bridge and listen to everything she gotta say. Don't say a word. After she's finished, then ask her to come on your bridge and you say everything you need to say. So that both of you can have a common understanding of what is the goal, what we call the issue. That's what many people use, and then hopefully you guys can come to an agreement to utilize the time that benefits the children. And keep in mind, I have two daughters, and they're 15, 16, and 18, and they don't really call me that much. As soon as these kids reach a certain age, they're on their phone. They may call me, they need a sneakers, they need money. So keep in mind that children, as they go along the journey, they don't need us as much as they get older, in my opinion. Food for thought.
Hey,
Well,
Do they not need us?
Hold on, let me chime in.
Do they not need us, or they don't need both of their parents? Because I think I just want to say, if we're going to be saying things, right? Can it be balanced? Because when you say they don't need us, who is us? They don't need me as a father, or they don't need both parents. They don't need their mother no more.
I was going to chime in for that, because I think, Rohan, when I don't agree with the word that they don't need us. I think they begin to become more independent.
Right. Okay.
But it's not that they don't need us, because they will need us until the day that they die or we die.
No, until you die, not they die.
Until we die. You see what I'm saying? So they'll need us. No, you know what? And I'm gonna tell you, Ron, even after we're long gone, you'll find your kids talking to you by themselves.
Right.
Remember what it is that
what
you imprinted on them while you were still living, right? because there are conversations that you're going to relive, and there are moments that you're going to say, you know what? I remember when my dad did this for me, or my mom did this, and it still lives with them on, right? So I don't think, it's not that they don't need us. I think they become a little bit more independent. And I think that's the difference in what it is that Rohan's trying to say. Rather than need, is more independence. And I think when with the point of what Chad was saying, I listening to what he says, and I know there's only one side of it. I think the fact that she spends more, she feels she spends more time with the kids than you do, lends her to believe that you're not around enough. And so sometimes, and I'll tell you now, and I'll use myself. I remember when I got married, I moved out my parents' house, and they were like, yeah, you don't come around a lot. And I was like, yeah, I do come around. You don't come around. When you coming? And I'll be like, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. I come by to visit them, and they don't talk to me. They're doing their own thing. And it's a presence that they just want to feel that you're around. And it's not so much, and sometimes when it comes to a family, and I say this because it's just your presence that they feel that they're missing, rather than the engagement that they're missing. So I think, like Rohan's saying, when you're listening to what she's saying, differentiate between is it engagement or just a presence that they feel that they're missing, because there's a difference between the two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I stand corrected. Let me correct myself. The needs change with children as they get mature, older. So I'll correct myself with that. It needs change. Not that they don't need us. That needs us change.
Correction noted. Ron, I did a great job mentoring you. But so but I'm sitting here thinking, and again, you know, every so often I get on my soapbox, because again, we don't have women in these discussions. So I have to try to channel, you know, the women that we represent. You know, all of us represent a woman in some way, shape, or form, because all of us have a mother. But I sit here and think about things that I could think about in this conversation that I wouldn't think about in no other conversation, in no other aspect of life. And you know what that is? How many abortions I had. And psychologically, I know I carry that totally different than, it's barely a memory for me. But the women who did have it, I wonder what type of trauma does that present to them. And so you see, when we was having casual sex, and none of the responsibility was really on me to really care for that child, or produce for that child, or provide for that child until that child actually got here. That woman got to go through so many psychological and scientific traumas, right? To decide whether I'm going to have it, well, I'm not. My body's going to change, blah, blah, blah. And so see all this different sacrifices. And I guess I never really, you know, and again, I'm really having a greater appreciation for all of those abortions, and a greater grief too for all of those abortions. That's not really mine, because I'm channeling their grief. And I have to challenge their grief because they did it for a man that simply wanted them for a moment, but didn't want a child from them for a lifetime. I can't see that no other way. I can't unsee it. You understand? But the fact that I'm having this conversation now, and remember I told you we got too many options, and the fact that abortion was an option for me because it simply, I felt like I lacked, not even lack, I just didn't want the accountability. Because I lacked, it means that it happened and I tried and I failed. That's when you lack something. But when you kill it, or when you kill it at the perception of it, at the pre-stages of it, not knowing what that relationship would have produced, not only in that child, but in that mother and in you, then that's the thing. And again, I rarely get to think about this, but I know at some point, either I'm going to think about it or I'm going to be judged for it anyway. You understand? But I have to have the real conversation of what our options really look like to say, you know what? There's no real comparison to my buy-in and my having this child versus you having it. Because at the end of the day, when you say having it is a choice for me. That's it. That's the only thing. It's a choice. That woman, when she gets the choice to have that child, you know what that choice is? She can have it or kill it. Imagine being under that kind of pressure and that kind of trauma. So I can't really compare myself to that kind of trauma and that kind of the choices of that particular trauma. I can never compare. I would never understand it. And that's all I'm saying.
Right, but I feel like I'm being told that once you become a father, that your whole life outside of your kids is over, which to me sounds absurd. Like, and I'm not comparing myself to an actor or a big time lawyer or judge, but those people are outside of their house a lot as well. Because I go do stuff that I find a peace in. That don't make me a bad father or abandoned parent, or, you know what I mean? I'm not abandoning my kids. I'm doing something for one to stay fit. Hell, I just turned 40, so I don't want to look like I'm 40. You know what I mean? But fishing also gives me that time where I can clear my head. I'm around other guys, and I can, like this circle right here. I wasn't introduced to this until, you know, I met Ron. So me holding in these thoughts or, you know, the different topics that you guys touch on weekly, I don't have these conversations with my wife. You know what I mean? So in a male space, and I have the time to just talk freely like men do when we're around other men and not be politically correct. Like, to me, that helps me come home and be able to deal with you guys on a peaceful level. Because now I'm ready to be all in. I done got my little energy out, my fix in. All right, now I'm here, I'm present, I'm spending quality time with everybody. But I just feel like, you know, there are sacrifices also that I made. She worked as a nurse overnight on the weekends while she was in practitioner school. She had class after she got off work. So somebody got to be there to hold these kids down, cook. She went out of town on a travel assignment for 3 months. Who was left with the kids for 3 months? Yeah, they my kids, but my whole life altered for those 3 months. Because now I'm a full-time single parent at that point in time. You know, but that ain't nothing to bring up and throw in her face. I'm just saying, like, my life is bigger than just the 4 walls in my house. You know what I mean? Once I make sure the house is good, I should be able to have 2 hours out of the day to go pour into other people or pour into myself. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, you know what you sound like?
I'm gonna get you, Ron. I'm gonna get you after this. Ron, I'm gonna let you go ahead and give him that advice. But Chad, you know what I just realized? I'm just hearing you. That's unfortunate because I was distracted by something else as well. But I'm just hearing you. Chad, you don't have a parental problem. You have a marital problem. You understand? And so what happened is that's displaced anger. And so it's nothing, the problem is not y'all children. You know what I'm saying? The problem is the times you guys don't have for each other. And that's, and so at some point there may be a little jealousy and envy going on because she thinks your life is easier than hers. And guess what? You may even think her life is easier than yours. And that, yeah, that will create a rift. So it's not you think we sometimes we amass parental problem with marital problem, and we're scared to really face the marital problem we have, and so we'll vicariously fight through the children. If that makes sense.
I hate when people do that to me. They just go and take one.
Or whatever.
I was gonna say the same thing, man.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you. I tell you because Chad, when I heard you speaking just now, right? I can promise you, if I wrote this down and didn't say who it was, if I said it was a man or a woman, I would believe it was a woman talking about her husband and how he works. I want you to think about that now. If we didn't say it was a Chad, we just told exactly what you just told us, it would sound like a woman who is kind of like saying, when do I get to do some things for me when my husband is working the way he working the things he's doing, you know? And that is really what, like, and I was going to bring this up as we have some brothers here who have did exactly this. I know a brother who had altered his whole life to spend more time to be 100% active dad. His wife was making the big bucks doing this, and the wife almost felt like she was losing her child. And so she said she quit her job so she could spend more time with the kids, and had this man have to go out and get 2 jobs. He had to then go get 2 jobs, and then he didn't have any time to spend with the kids, with her, or anything. because she felt that he was being more of a parent than she was. And so these are some of the things we have to begin to know and think about as men that can happen. So we got to we want as much as possible try to balance these things out. And I think Lightborn hits it on the head. Even in the idea of somebody calling you a father who is abandoning their children. That's not an issue between you and the child. That's just between you and them. They may feel like you abandoned them. And the idea that they're connected to this child, that means the child abandoned too. So the hurt, we see this all the time, the hurt they feel from you, they believe you can do to their child. So they're not gonna let you get into their child and do these things or hurt their child the way you hurt them. When in many instances, if they go to a support group or they go to a therapy group and the person is being very fair, the person will ask them and say, what do you think he's gonna do to the child if you give him the time to be with him? And you hear this, I hear this all the time. He's not gonna be committed. He don't have the time. And that really, they're not talking about with the child because the child don't even know. You're talking about a 6-month-old. That child don't even know who they with. They don't know if the person committed or not committed. They don't know any of those things until the time that they can really process. But if they didn't see you all the time, and I give you a great example of this, I was staying at a friend's house and they had a dog. And in the beginning of the time when I was staying by the house, the dog was snipping at me, growling at me, wanting to bite me. Before I left that house, the dog was sitting in my lap. I'm talking a big dog. I think he cried when I got dropped off at the airport. I think he cried. The dog cried. And so it goes to show the time we spend around somebody, they become, even in animals, they become familiar with us and they begin to know us and they begin to understand us. And we begin to understand them because I understood the dog a little bit better. Not to equate your relationship with your child and the dog, but I'm using this example to say it's important for us to be able to have the time to spend around our child so our child can know us. Not what somebody told them, not what somebody feel about them, not what somebody has suggested. But if we don't get that time, the child will only know what people have said or told them. And that's unfair to the child. That's very unfair to the child.
Chad, a quick one. I like to do numbers, and you mentioned numbers. You sparked something to me when you mentioned numbers. 8 hours in the day for work, right? You have what? You may hang out with us as a father with a group. You drive from, I don't know if you work from home or you drive to work. That may be a half an hour, depending on the situation. You need 8 hours sleep. So let's do the numbers. 8 hours work, 8 hours sleep. That's 16 hours out of the day, correct? 16 hours.
Correct.
So you have 4 hours left. 4 hours to, well, it depends if you drive. You may not be someone who drive. You have to budget. Just like when you budget your money, you need to budget your time. And we talked about communication earlier, which is vital because, you turn the indicator on, you're making a left turn, same thing, you got to communicate. You have 4 hours. And to be honest, you're going to have to really work that 4 hours, man. I think you mentioned to me you have 6 hours sleep, which is not even enough for all of us.
Correct. 5 hours of sleep. Correct.
So
that's the give and take. If I want to go to the gym early in the morning, so that way I'm not even bothering anybody. I'm back and we can go. So I make sure I get it out of the way before anybody wake up.
All right. So even me as a father, I go to the gym, but I do home gym. I do my bell, my push-ups, my planks. I do everything in the mornings. I do like 20 minutes by myself. So I'm not saying you should do that. All I'm saying is this: you gotta budget your time. It's gonna simply boil down to that.
But Rohan,
wait, hold up. But Rohan,
you telling me he got to budget his time?
He's not doing the activities every day. You see what I'm saying? There's certain activities he says he makes time for the family. I think myself, Lightborn, hit it on the head with the relationship and talking about how she views what's going on with the relationship between them two and not the kids. Because it could be something with that, because everything, see, I asked for the balance and he gave the balance of how he divides his time between himself, because in fatherhood groups, we talk about self-care. So now you're telling him to cut the self-care out so he can meet all these other needs. But if you don't take care of yourself, You can't be 100 for everything else. And so you want to just look at all the different aspects of what's going on with them. Go ahead.
Okay, so we talk about self-care, which is a big role with father. All I mentioned is that I mentioned me as an example that I do my own gym at home because I have to budget my time. I do have a small business. I have to try and so do what we need to do as fathers. So all I said to Chad, we did the numbers: 8 hours sleep, which Chad needs. In fact, all of us need that. Chad goes to work 8 hours. That's 16 hours of the day. So we're working here 4 hours. And that's what all I'm saying. He's gonna have to look at his hours and say, "Hey man, I got 4 hours. How am I gonna do this? Or I got 6 hours. How am I gonna do this?" I agree with you that it could be a scenario with he and his wife. That I agree, but I'm just putting an additional tool for him because whatever happens in the day, you got a limited amount of time to do what you need to do. That's for all fathers.
Well, Rohan, let me even say this to go back to what Lightborn said. It's easy for us to say that to him, right?
Right.
But did we compare and contrast how much time his wife had with the kids? And we're sitting here making an assumption based on just what Chad giving us his schedule. We don't know his wife's schedule. She might only got 30 minutes with the kids. See how that changes? See how that changed? Because if she only got you talking about he got to manage 4 hours, she might only have 30 minutes. So the real issue is for them as a couple to look at their free time and manage it together for the family. See, and that's what we're really talking about when we're looking at those married couples and married families that live together. The two adults have to sit down and manage their time for their children around what their schedules are. That's the only way you're gonna get to the now, we ain't even talking about on the other end of the spectrum where they live in different houses in different cities. Nothing gonna get you. It's hard to, unless you got a for sure parenting plan that both parents is gonna follow to the T. It's gonna be imbalanced all the way around, completely.
And you know what? I'm gonna piggyback off that and say, and I think Lightborn did say this. You gotta, or was it you, Ron? You've got to balance that time for yourself. You got to balance that time for your relationship, and then you have to balance the time for the kids. Because after those kids grow up and they leave the house, it's just going to be you two. And if you haven't nurtured that relationship between the two of you, you're not going to have anything left after those kids go. There's a lot of people who divorce
right after the kids
leave the house because they have nothing else in common because they never nurtured the relationship.
Yeah.
So it's important, just as much you nurture the relationship with the kids, you got to nurture the relationship with the spouse, and then you got to have to nurture that relationship for yourself.
Hold on, let me do this. I see you in there, brother. I see you open the mic a couple times. You ain't try to jump in. I know you got some things to say. What you got to say, brother, about this conversation? I'm watching, and I see your mic going open and close. I definitely want to hear what you got to say tonight about this. Anything that you got to say before we get ready to close out, because I know you've been engaged in this. And
you talking about me?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I couldn't really talk. Yeah, I was driving earlier, so I couldn't talk. I got home, my brother was talking to me about the situation. But just to talk about earlier what I think Mr. Lighthouse was saying. So with me, Lighthorn. Oh, my bad, not Lighthouse. So Lighthorn. So with me, right?
He like a lighthouse though. He beacon the light. He shared the light all around.
Yeah. So like with me, so I'm only 30 years old, right? Born in '92. So with me, right? Like I was raised by just all women. All women. Mama, grandma, auntie, great auntie, church. Not some one side was in church, one side wasn't in church. So with me, I sometimes come off I'm not even ignorant or arrogant, but it's not that I don't give no sympathy to women, even with the pregnancy situation. But I've literally for 30 years of my life, I've seen women manipulate. I've seen women use. I've seen damn near commit every single crime that there is. Use the government against man. Use the system against man. So when he was saying about we must take into consideration of the trauma that they receive, even in like when they're having abortions and all that type of stuff, all that's understandable. But my thing is, I'm a huge male advocate. What about the trauma that we suffer? You know what I'm saying? Like, what about everything that we sit there and that we go through on a daily basis once we open that door and we walk out the house? Because like I say, I seen a woman can know the situation that she in and still do it. But then as a man, as us, now we gotta bow down, or we have to take into consideration about the mistake that you made. You know what I'm saying? Like, you made that mistake. And you're saying that, like, if I'm as a guy, right? If I'm telling you, like, this is the situation between us, like, I can't enter you unless you allow me to, besides rape. So we all know unprotected sex is like one of the best feelings in the world. But if you allow me to go inside you without a condom, and it's a conversation that we had, now you're fighting about you want to get abortion, but now you want to mention trauma. My thing is this: don't open your legs to anybody that you don't want to be with. Just like as a man, if we get a woman pregnant, and we say we don't want the baby, and she's still gonna have the baby, then we are financially responsible of it unless we want to. We don't want to unless we sign our rights over, and that's just not as easy as we say. And all the other things that he was saying that women go through, I've literally seen women do that on purpose throughout the whole, I would say 30, but probably the whole 15 years as me actually understanding, since I was 15 years old, me understanding the difference between man and woman. I've seen them do it themselves. So with me personally, I always tell them, like, bro, like, I always tell them, like, man, I'm like, you did that. You know he wasn't, or you know the situation that you put yourself in. Now you're telling me that we got to have sympathy for it, and that's something that I necessarily don't do. And I have two sisters and an older cousin that I'm close with. All women, and I've seen them have kids, and I'm just like, why would you even date this type of guy? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know the situation. Like, I've seen that on a consistent basis, even with the older woman in our parent, or the older woman in my family. So I've seen that. And then, like, what me and you talked about yesterday, doctor, what we was talking about when we said about a father not being present in a child's life for whatever reason, and that child go ask the father why you wasn't present. Like, with me being the age I am now, a lot of times the father won't even tell the child the truth. Won't even tell the child the truth, because they can already see that you was mama's boy. They can already see that you're gonna take, you already taking your mom's side already. You're just coming to ask me this. Sometimes they even ask when they're intoxicated, but you only coming to ask me this to see, like, for real, a lot of guys can't stand up to their father until they intoxicated, like, until they get a couple shots or whatever they like to drink, and they can't even stand up to their father until then. So a lot of them go and ask their father that question, and as a man now, as I got older as a man now, I know that a lot of men don't even waste their time, because they already know what's going to happen. They can't really say that your mom was out there. They can't really say that your mom slept with uncle such and such, which is my brother. That's why it hurt me so much, I chose to stay away. Or as a man, I was going through my own trauma at a young age. And yes, I had a child so early, and I should never went away, but I wanted to be there. Or your mom was a pain in my behind, so I knew to go away. Because I always told my boys, always go and talk to your father. Always. Because I was born in 92. Some of y'all on here probably graduated in 92. So I learned there was always a life before I was born. There was always a life before I was born. So I tell my boys, you never know what happened between you and your father. Because let's be real, we got aunties and uncles and aunties, and we got sisters who's your grandma, your great auntie, that don't even talk. And it's been 40 years and they still don't talk. You don't know, because you wasn't born, or you was such a little child when it happened, but you don't know why they talk. But that's because it's things that go on way before we was born. But like that's what I've been trying to talk, but I just been like kind of busy. But I'm sorry, like I was raised by women. So it's a lot of sympathy I don't give them at all whatsoever because I see them put themselves in it on purpose.
Let
Let
me
me give you the science. Forget the sympathy. All right? Let me give you the science and the sociology on it. Imagine this right now. Let me ask you a question. And so some of probably your greatest rappers, businessmen, I mean, I'm pretty sure you're probably a great or a good fan of Jay-Z or Tupac, whatever the case may be, right?
Lil Wayne, my favorite rapper.
Okay. And being that, if I ask you, you know, like, you know what? I say something like, oh, you know, them guys don't deserve to be where they at because they got it the wrong way. You would probably give me a scenario of why they had to get it the wrong way to get to the right where they at. Would you agree to that? You give me the narrative behind it.
So honestly, I'm be honest with you, I'm different. You know, everybody was raised different, so I won't judge nobody for what happened.
Right. But you are. Because you said the women. See what I'm just saying? What I did was just check that mirror and just turn it back around. And so you say you don't judge women, but I'm like, you say women don't get no sympathy from you. So you do judge. You do, because they don't get no sympathy. Because if you didn't judge, they would get sympathy. You understand? So what I am saying is this. If you understood the first of all, I'm talking about the sociology, like we got racial disparities. Most men, particularly black men, we have racial disparities, but we don't have the sexism. Women, and particularly black women, got racism and sexism and classism if you factor that in. If the three injustices in the world are those three, racism, sexism, and classism, one feeds the other, right? That's how you make $1 out of 15 cents. Racism represents 15 cents, then sexism is bigger, and then classism is the biggest because there's more poor people in the world than it is women, and there's more women in the world than it is black people. Now, because of that, you've got to understand that even though we may suffer from two of them as black men, we're going to suffer from the racism and the classism, which means we're black and we may not have the money or the pedigree, you know, the economic wherewithal to get to where we need to be. But women, black women got all three, particularly if, and this is why they do so well in the economic field. Because if they don't do well in the economic field, in the job field and all the other stuff, they'll always have all three of them going against them at every time. And so we apply sexism to our women like the system applied racism to us. And so when you said you didn't have any sympathy, I'm like, no, you should. Because the very thing that the system is doing to you, you're actually doing it to your women because you can rationalize why you're doing it, no matter. And I'm like, listen, think about this. I would say that one thing Jay-Z and then Tupac them had in common is because of racism, it made them desperate. And it put them in a desperate situation to get to where they were. Well, the same thing applies to women. Because of all three, sexism, racism, and classism, then they're up against even more, you understand, to be as slimy as you just said. And so they're not our equals. They'll never be. Even when they get the education, they're still not getting it. I'm talking facts now. Even with the education, they still don't get paid as much as you. You understand? That will make you desperate. And matter of fact, they just did a study about a couple months ago, and if not a year ago, that women, I'm talking about well-to-do rich black women, right? We're still having poor ass outcomes. You know what I'm saying? A rich black woman, which means if Obama had a baby, she's still gonna have the same outcome as Quisha from the ghetto. The question was, why is that? You understand? That's how much your women, and particularly your black women, are up against. But again, we can't know that because we can't see in their head until we start to understand the science of their circumstances. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so but
I like Bourne. You know, I'm listening what you're saying, but I think for him, he's taking personal circumstance situation, and it's not. You know, he's applying it to the worldly view, right? And I get that, but the generalization, I think it goes back into saying there's a pocket of women who will do that to you without provocation. But then there's another pocket of women who is done to without provocation. You see what I'm saying? And so I think you can't intermingle both women into the same group because they don't fit into the same category. So I hear what you're saying, but I also hear what he's saying, because you have those women who they make it their life mission to be slimy. You see what I'm saying?
That's what I mean.
Well, let me say that before. Let me say this one thing, because I think it will sum up a very important thing that's happening right here that happens very often. This idea of learned behavior, right? First thing I heard him say is he was raised by all these women, so he got a full understanding. Now, you don't got no sympathy for him because you was raised by women. So you believe that women should be able to take care of that shit themselves.
No,
I
don't believe
your
in that.
grandma and all that.
I don't believe in that. Yeah, I don't believe in that at all. No, I don't believe in that at all whatsoever. Not 0%. And I think that's the problem with a lot of guys my age too, and young and a little older. Like I said, I'm in the 90s. A lot of us was raised by single moms, and we seen them do it by themselves. So we feel like, oh, you know, the girl we mess with that we do get pregnant, whatever the case may be. Or we believe women can do it by themselves. Right. And I would never. No.
Right. Okay. So I'm glad you said that you separate yourself but the large majority of people, not just the men feel that way, but also the women, because guess what? The girls grow up and they take care of their younger brothers and sisters and say, shit, I had to do this already. So if he don't come, fuck him. That's what they say. Fuck him. I already know how to do this. And I don't need him because my mama didn't need him. My daddy wasn't here. So people begin that same learned behavior. And that's the part where we have to really sometimes begin to say, how do we change that so we can get our families back, even if they're not romantically together, but the idea to understand the true thing. And that Lightborn said, it takes the village. You can't say, oh, the village gonna take care of the child, but the daddy ain't nowhere to be found. You get the hell out of here. You ain't got no village if the daddy not gonna be there. You can't substitute everybody else for the daddy. No matter how you try to play it. Just like you can't substitute the mama at all. Them two people gotta be there because that's the maker of the baby. That's the maker. And if you think you're gonna isolate one of them out and y'all gonna handle it yourself, you on the road to disaster. The child will not be the 100% that you want them to be. They will always still be 50%. Yeah. Because they missing 50%. Yeah. So this idea in our mind, we think, oh, we can X people out, don't worry about them. I tell this to men all the time. Oh, I'm gonna get my baby and I fuck the mom. You sound like a fool. You need a mom because the kid needs a mom just like the mom needs you to be in the kid's life. The kid needs both of you. Or else they gonna be missing something and gonna find it in some other places that you don't want them to find it. And that's when your child goes from having 100%, 50% to 0. Yeah, in that order. Okay, I know I'm great. Like boy, what you going to say? I was gonna tell you, go ahead and call you. Brother, hey, listen, we ran over because this is this topic, and I know it would get rowdy and rough. Hey, I really want to thank everybody who contributed tonight, man. This was a really, really good conversation. I feel really much better about this. I hope that you do. I hope if you like and you subscribe and watch more of our videos, if you've been watching this, this is definitely a great We're going to finish. We're going to continue this conversation tomorrow night on our private Fatherhood Think Tank Men Only conversation tomorrow night. So hit the Zoom if you want to join us. We'll be there. With that being said, I want to thank everybody, Father, participating, and we'll see you next week. And Father, repeat after me. I am a man of honor. I am a man of courage. I am a man of courage. I say I am a man of respect. Fathers, come on now. I said I am. I said that you are. You are. I said that we are. We are championship father.
Oh, you getting your title back, huh?
Yeah. Hey, no, you want to know what it is? I'm in a place. I mean, you know, sometimes I can't get as hyped because people say you're talking too loud. You sound like you're fussing and fighting on the. So that I'm in my own private place today, and I can get buck wild. And I see Larry join me to see I got the hype man. Got to get y'all hyped. So if I ain't hyped, y'all ain't gonna be hyped. So we know how that goes. Again, we want to thank everybody for joining us.
I want to really thanks Tay and Chad, man. They really were chiming in.
Yeah,
they brought that new energy in, and we just always need it because sometimes you can just get a little dull, just hearing the same voice. So
not only the new energy, but a different generation's perspective of things that we ain't even thinking about for many of us. You know, again, this idea and so much of the conversation that we have, I think we now have the three generations that we need to have to really begin to have this conversation to help the very next generation coming. With that being said, again, thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow night. If not, we'll see you next Tuesday on here on Fatherhood Think Tank. Good night.
All right.